Welcome back to Biblical Greek Tidbits. In this presentation we will look briefly at imperatival participles. These participles carry an imperatival force and are grammatically independent of any verb in the context. Imperatival participles are to be distinguished from so-called attendant circumstance participles that take on the mood of the finite verb. We will illustrate both types of participle in the discussion below. We should note that there are scholars who deny that any participle in the Greek New Testament is truly imperatival. However, it seems that most scholars admit such a category, although they may disagree on the identification and meaning of specific cases. Although most scholars admit the category of imperatival participle, there seems to be quite a bit of disagreement about the development and meaning of this category. These discussions of validity, development, and meaning are beyond the scope of this presentation. Reference 5 below has a rather complete discussion of the validity, development, and meaning of the imperatival participle with particular application to 1 Peter. In this video, we will simply assume that the category of imperatival participle is valid and provide a few examples that seem to fall into such a category. We will not discuss the various nuances of the meaning of the imperatival participle beyond the general notion of command or exhortation. First, we look at the major references used in preparing this presentation. Here are the major references used in preparing this presentation. If you want to take a closer look, just pause the video. Participles are usually defined as verbal adjectives. Thus, they take on verbal aspects, tense and voice, as well as adjectival aspects, gender, number, and case. Depending on the context, the participle may be at times more verbal or at times more adjectival in nature. New Testament Greek participles have many uses, such as substantival, adjectival, or adverbial. This varied use can make the study of participles rather difficult. In this presentation, we will look at a somewhat rare use of the participle, that of the imperatival participle. The imperatival participle is grammatically independent from any finite verb in the context in which it is used. This use of the participle is to be distinguished from the so-called attendant circumstance participle, in which the participle takes on the mood of the main verb, which may be indicative or imperative. We will provide examples of each in the slides that follow. Our first example of an imperatival participle comes from 1 Peter 3, verse 1. Amios gynekes ipata samene tis these andrasein. Translation: likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands. Ipata samene is a present passive or middle participle, feminine gender, plural number, nominative case. The same participle is used in verse 5, but there it is translated as a circumstantial participle, that is, describing an accompanying circumstance relating to the main verb of the sentence, rather than an imperatival participle. 1 Peter 3:5. Utos garpate ke aie gynekes elpizuse is theon ekosmun Eftas ipata samane tis these andrasin. Young's literal translation: for thus once also the holy women who did hope on God were adorning themselves, being subject to their own husbands. Here we see how important it is to look carefully at the context when translating participles. Our next examples come from Romans 12, verse 9, where there are two occurrences. Romans 12:9. E agape anipakritas apistigundes ta paniran kalomini ta agatho. Translation: Let love be genuine, abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good. Apistigundes is a present active participle, masculine gender, plural number, nominative case. Kalomini is a present middle participle, masculine gender, plural number, nominative case. In Romans 12, verses 9 through 19, there's a string of imperatival participles, that is, participles not grammatically connected with a finite verb used as a command or exhortation. In fact, most examples of imperatival participles are found in Romans 12 and 1 Peter. See reference 1, page 651. Our next example comes from Hebrews 13, verse 5. Aphilorios athropos arkumene tis parousin. Translation: Your conduct must be free from the love of money, and you must be content with what you have. Arkumene is a present middle or passive participle, masculine gender, plural number, nominative case. The wording in this verse is a little hard to translate without adding some words in English. Literally, we might translate as the kind of life that is free from covetousness, being content with the things present. Translated in this way, the participle would be circumstantial, coordinated with the implied verb is inserted in the literal translation given above. However, I believe, along with most translators, that the imperatival sense seems to best fit the context here. We next look briefly at the attendant circumstance participle. I mentioned in a previous slide that the independent imperatival participle is to be distinguished from the attendant circumstance participle that takes on the mood of the main verb. We give a couple examples of this use. Matthew 28:19a, Pariphendes un mathitevsate panda ta ethni. Translation: Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Here, the participle pariphendes is coordinated with the imperative finite verb mathitevsate, which is second person plural aorist active imperative. Note, some scholars would translate as you go rather than imperatively. Luke 16:6, Ade ipen αυτό δέξε σου τα γράμματα καθίσας τα chaos gropson pendicanda. Translation: He said to him, Take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Here the participle kathisas takes on the mood of the finite aorist active imperative verb gropson. This has been a brief introduction to New Testament Greek imperatival participles. We learned that this class of participles is fairly rare in the Greek New Testament, with most examples occurring in Romans 12 and 1 Peter. I think it would be a worthwhile exercise for the viewer to go through the entire string of imperatival participles in Romans 12 and the occurrences in 1 Peter, as well as looking at more examples of the so-called attendant circumstance participle that coordinates with the main finite verb in the imperative mood. The key to identification of imperatival participles is that they are grammatically independent of any verb, unlike the attendant circumstance participle, and carry an imperatival force. Remember that there may be an implied verb, usually some form of emi, in the context, so that the participle may not be imperatival as defined in this presentation. As usual, I defer to real scholars on all matters of biblical Greek. Thank you for watching.